Eli Navarro had seen countless stars in his life, but none of them ever made him feel quite like this. The Andromeda trade expanse stretched before him, a glittering swirl of distant suns, floating stations, and drifting cargo vessels. He leaned against the side of his ship, the Starling, and let his eyes wander over the maze of metal structures and neon lights. Space had always been lonely, but sometimes, among the chaos, it could be strangely beautiful. He adjusted his jacket and stepped onto the docking platform. The station was alive with movement. Aliens of every conceivable shape and size crowded the corridors, their voices and gestures forming a chaotic symphony of sound and motion. Some floated, some slithered, and some had legs where no human would expect them. Eli had learned over years in the expanse that appearances could be deceiving. An alien that looked fragile could be the shrewdest negotiator in 100 parsecs, and one that seemed powerful could crumble at the slightest miscalculation. He walked slowly, letting the crowd carry him, his eyes scanning for anything unusual. That's when he saw her. She was unlike any alien he had ever encountered. Her skin shimmered as if made of liquid crystal, catching the lights of the station and scattering them in subtle rainbows. Her eyes were multifaceted and luminous, reflecting the movement around her while remaining sharply aware of everything. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught him, it was the way she looked at him. She gave him a look that made him stop in his tracks. It was impossible to define, a combination of curiosity, challenge, and something that felt almost like understanding. Eli's heart skipped a beat, though he had no idea why. He had faced pirates, negotiators, rogue AIs, and even gravity storms, but a simple look from this alien unsettled him more than any danger he had ever faced. The crowd moved around him, and for a moment he felt invisible except for her gaze. Then she moved slightly, tilting her head, her eyes never leaving his. It was subtle, but there was a clear signal: follow. Eli hesitated. He didn't know her intentions, and he didn't know if following an unknown alien in a crowded station was wise. Most humans would have turned away, focusing on their own business, their own survival. But something in that look called to him. He had always been the kind of person who trusted his instincts. Humans, after all, often thrived by noticing things others missed, by reading subtle cues, by making connections others didn't see. He adjusted the strap of his satchel and moved after her. She led him through corridors that twisted and rose in ways that seemed impossible. Some passages were wide and open, filled with floating cargo platforms and alien merchants. Others were narrow and dimly lit, the walls pulsing with soft bioluminescence that seemed almost alive. Eli kept a steady pace, careful to not draw attention to himself, but he couldn't help stealing glances at her. Every step she took was measured and confident, yet graceful. Her presence seemed to bend the space around her in some intangible way. Humans often underestimated alien psychology, assuming logic and efficiency ruled every decision. But here was proof that some creatures were guided by intuition, by subtle play, and by signals humans were only beginning to understand. And yet, Eli realized humans had something they did not: adaptability. The ability to improvise, to read intent, to act in ways others could not predict. They turned a corner, and the noise of the main station faded. They entered a quiet chamber, circular and softly lit by ambient light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Eli looked around, unsure of what to expect. The alien gestured toward the center. She did not speak, but her gestures were deliberate, her movements almost like a language in themselves. Eli took a cautious step forward. He had learned over the years that many things in space were tests. Not all tests were hostile, but some were puzzles meant to measure skill, intelligence, or even character. He had faced them before, and humans often succeeded because they could think outside the rigid logic of alien systems. While other species relied on protocol and precedent, Humans relied on curiosity, intuition, and sometimes audacity. She extended one of her delicate arms, fingers tipped with subtle points of light. Symbols formed in the air above her hand, floating, glowing shapes that shifted like water. Eli frowned, studying them. They made no sense at first. They were not numbers or letters, at least not in any system he recognized. But as he watched, patterns began to emerge. Certain symbols always appeared together, others reacted to his gaze. It was not a language of sound, but of logic and interaction. He reached out, touching one of the symbols lightly. It shimmered, and another set appeared. The alien's eyes lit up with what he interpreted as approval. Eli's pulse quickened. He had always been good at puzzles, at seeing patterns where others saw chaos. And now he realized he was part of one. For a long moment they worked together, though silently. Eli touched, gestured, and experimented. The alien responded, sometimes mirroring him, sometimes changing the challenge. It was like a dance, one that required attention, creativity, and instinct. Humans were not always the fastest learners, but they were persistent. They made mistakes, learned from them, and adapted in ways more rigid species could not. Eli felt that human quality surging in him now, giving him confidence in the face of an unknown challenge. Hours could have passed, though Eli had no way of knowing. Time seemed suspended in the quiet chamber. Finally, with a final gesture, a holographic map erupted from the center of the room, illuminating the walls with glowing lines and star systems. The alien's eyes flickered toward him. The map showed secret trade routes, hidden stations, and safe passages known only to a few. But one path glimmered ominously, a line of light that pulsed as if warning of danger. Eli's mind raced. He realized the puzzle had been more than a test of logic. It had been a test of perception, of judgment, of intuition. Humans, with all their flaws and unpredictability, were capable of seeing connections others missed, of acting creatively in situations that did not follow set rules. And here, in front of him, was proof. The alien stepped closer. Her hand hovered above the map, not touching, just pointing. It was a subtle indication, a nudge, but enough. Eli understood. The path she highlighted was dangerous, but it was also the key to something greater, a way for humans to gain knowledge and access that no other species had. He swallowed. The weight of the moment settled on him, but it was not fear. It was anticipation. Humans had always thrived when others doubted them. They had always succeeded when the odds were stacked against them. And now, in a galaxy filled with beings far older and more advanced, Eli felt that same spark that had driven humans to survive on Earth, to explore and to dream. The alien's gaze met his again. It was the same look as before, but now it carried something more: expectation. Not demand, not threat, but a silent challenge. Do you understand what you are capable of? Can you rise to what is asked? Eli nodded, almost instinctively. He did not know what lay ahead, but he knew this. Humans were unpredictable, clever, and resilient. That unpredictability, that audacity, had carried them across the stars, and it would carry him now. The alien gave a subtle nod, then stepped back. The map flickered once more and then solidified into patterns he could interpret. Eli traced the routes with his fingers, memorizing the paths, committing every twist and turn to memory. One wrong move could cost him access to the knowledge hidden in the station, but he trusted his instincts. Humans often succeeded not because they were perfect, but because they dared to try. A soft hum echoed through the chamber as the holographic map settled. Eli looked up. The alien was watching him, waiting. He realized that this was more than a puzzle, more than a test. It was an invitation, a chance to act in a way only a human could, to demonstrate the qualities that made his species extraordinary. He straightened his shoulders. Whatever came next, he would face it the way humans always had, with curiosity, courage, and relentless determination. He would not let opportunity slip away. The alien tilted her head slightly, eyes twinkling with amusement or perhaps admiration. Eli felt a smile tug at his lips. Humans were small in the vastness of the galaxy, but they were never ordinary, not when it mattered most. And as he followed her deeper into the station, into the unknown corridors that promised both challenge and discovery, Eli understood one thing clearly. Whatever she had intended with that first look, whatever plans she had set in motion, he would rise to meet them. He would do what any human would, because humans never backed down, they never failed to act, and sometimes a single glance could start a chain of events that changed everything. Eli followed the alien deeper into the station, his mind racing. The quiet corridors twisted and curved in ways that seemed impossible. Pipes glowed faintly with bioluminescent fluids, walls pulsed softly, and the floor beneath his feet hummed with some energy he couldn't identify. Every step he took felt like stepping further into an entirely new world, one that operated by rules he could barely understand. And yet, he was not afraid. Curiosity pushed him forward, as it always did. The alien stopped in front of a panel embedded in the wall. Her skin shimmered in the soft light as she gestured toward it, a subtle wave of her arm that made the symbols on the panel ripple and glow. Eli stepped closer, examining it. It was not a simple control panel with buttons or levers. Instead, it displayed a web of lines and glowing nodes, constantly shifting. Some of the nodes pulsed faster than others, and the connections between them changed, almost like they were alive. He frowned, studying the display. At first, it made no sense. He had dealt with alien technology before, but this was different. It was not just mechanical, it seemed responsive. It seemed to be watching him as he watched it. Eli remembered the lessons from the past. Aliens often designed challenges that tested perception, pattern recognition, and lateral thinking. They expected mistakes, expected hesitation. Humans, however, had a tendency to adapt, to improvise, and to notice things that others overlooked. He reached out and touched one of the glowing nodes. The panel reacted immediately, a new set of nodes branching from the one he had chosen. He smiled slightly. This was the kind of puzzle humans were good at. Step by step, observe, test, adjust, and repeat. Patterns would emerge if he paid attention. The alien watched silently, her eyes bright, reflecting every flicker of the panel. She did not offer guidance directly, only subtle hints, tilts of her head, the slightest movement of her fingers. Eli understood. She wanted him to figure it out for himself. This was not about following instructions, it was about understanding. Humans thrived in situations where rules were flexible, where creativity mattered more than protocol. Hours passed. Eli traced lines, tested nodes, and mapped the connections in his mind. Each step led to new patterns, some predictable, some surprising. Occasionally, he would pause, studying the way the nodes reacted to each movement, noticing subtle shifts in the pulsing lights. The alien's eyes followed him every time, encouraging him with an expression he could only describe as satisfaction. Finally, Eli leaned back slightly, taking a deep breath. He had connected most of the nodes, creating a path through the constantly shifting network. He realized that this was not just a puzzle. It was a simulation of the station itself, a representation of hidden systems and secret pathways. The glowing nodes were more than symbols, they were access points, locks, and triggers. By understanding the pattern, he could navigate the station efficiently, avoiding areas designed to confuse or trap outsiders. The alien extended her hand, pointing to a particular path on the panel. The nodes along that path glowed brighter, pulsing rhythmically. Eli's heart raced. He recognized the pattern as a test, a challenge within a challenge. The path led to a section of the station few humans had ever seen, places that were not on official maps. If he followed it correctly, he could uncover secrets that even the station's authorities might not know. He nodded, signaling that he understood. The alien's eyes flickered with what seemed like amusement. Then, she stepped aside and motioned for him to proceed. Eli moved cautiously, tracing the glowing path in his mind, memorizing every turn and shift. Humans had a unique skill in navigating uncertainty. Unlike many alien species, who relied on rigid systems or strict protocols, humans were flexible. They could improvise when rules changed, think creatively when patterns shifted, and act decisively when the unexpected occurred. The corridor narrowed, and Eli felt a subtle shift in the air. The hum beneath his feet intensified, and soft vibrations ran along the walls. He realized the station itself was monitoring him, reacting to his movements, testing his decisions at every step. Some nodes on the panel had hinted at these hidden responses, but it was up to him to interpret them correctly. One wrong move could have trapped him, or at least slowed his progress. He took a steadying breath and continued. Step by step, he followed the path, noticing small details the alien had left for him. A faint glow on the floor marking the correct turn, a slight pulse in the wall indicating an approaching sensor, and a gentle shift in the air pressure that warned of a nearby gate. Eli's mind absorbed every signal, every pattern. Humans excelled at noticing subtleties, at reading cues that others overlooked. That skill was proving invaluable now. Finally, he reached a large chamber, circular and high-ceilinged, with a smooth metallic floor that reflected the soft glow of the walls. In the center floated a holographic sphere, displaying a detailed map of the expanse. Eli stepped closer, examining it. The sphere rotated slowly, revealing hidden routes, secret trading posts, and paths between stars that were not on any official chart. His pulse quickened. This was more than information. It was knowledge that could change the balance of trade and travel in the galaxy. The alien moved beside him, pointing at certain nodes on the sphere. Each one represented a strategic location, a secret route, or an area of potential opportunity. Eli realized that she had brought him here because she recognized something uniquely human in him. The ability to see connections others might miss, to understand subtlety, and to act decisively when it mattered. "This is incredible," he said quietly, not sure if she understood him. She did not reply with words but tilted her head, acknowledging his statement. Eli smiled. Humans had a way of understanding without language, a way of connecting through intuition, observation, and shared focus. That understanding was often underestimated by other species, but it had carried humans across worlds for centuries. He traced his finger along one of the paths, memorizing it. The alien's eyes followed every movement. Eli felt a strange sense of partnership forming, despite the difference in species. They were working together in a silent rhythm, a collaboration based on observation, understanding, and mutual respect. Humans excelled at forming bonds even with strangers, a skill that allowed them to negotiate, adapt, and survive in unpredictable environments. Suddenly, a soft hum echoed through the chamber. Eli looked up. The holographic sphere flickered, and a new set of nodes appeared, glowing more intensely than before. He realized that the station was reacting to his presence, updating the simulation in real time. This was no static map. It was a dynamic system, testing him, challenging him, and responding to his decisions. Eli's mind raced. He had faced complex systems before, but none like this. It required not just logic, but intuition, creativity, and flexibility. Humans had a history of solving problems that seemed impossible, of adapting to changing circumstances, and of finding solutions where others gave up. This was another test, and he intended to succeed. He reached for a cluster of nodes and manipulated them, watching as the holographic paths shifted in response. The alien's eyes glimmered, reflecting light and approval. Eli felt a surge of confidence. Humans were often underestimated, but in situations like this, their unpredictability became an advantage. The station could anticipate certain behaviors, but it could not predict the ingenuity, adaptability, or audacity of a human mind. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as Eli worked through the simulation. He traced paths, tested connections, and adjusted strategies, learning the system's logic. Slowly, patterns emerged. The nodes formed routes that were not obvious at first glance, revealing shortcuts, safe zones, and optimal paths through the station and beyond. Eli realized that by understanding these patterns, he could navigate not only the station but the expanse itself more effectively than any automated system could predict. Finally, he stepped back, taking a deep breath. He had solved the challenge. The sphere stabilized, displaying a network of routes that only a few could comprehend. The alien moved closer, her eyes shining with approval. Eli felt a sense of accomplishment, but also awareness. This was only the beginning. The knowledge he had gained was powerful, but it came with responsibility. Humans often carried the weight of decisions larger than themselves, and this moment was no different. The alien extended a hand toward him, not in a gesture of command, but as an invitation. Eli understood. She was offering him a choice, to take what he had learned and use it wisely, to act with the ingenuity and adaptability that humans were known for, or to walk away. Humans thrived on opportunity. They took risks, made connections, and adapted to challenges that others could not. Eli nodded, silently accepting. Together, they moved toward the exit of the chamber, the holographic sphere fading behind them. The corridors stretched ahead, twisting and turning like the paths they had just navigated. Eli felt a surge of determination. He had proven himself, not through strength or aggression, but through observation, creativity, and human ingenuity. These were the tools that had carried humanity across the stars, and they would continue to serve him in the challenges ahead. The alien glanced at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and respect. Eli realized that this partnership, strange as it was, had potential. Humans were often underestimated in a galaxy full of advanced species, but that underestimation could become their greatest advantage. Adaptability, intuition, and courage were qualities that could turn even the most complex challenge into an opportunity. As they moved deeper into the station, Eli felt a sense of excitement. The unknown stretched before him, full of possibilities. The alien had given him guidance, but it was his decisions, his interpretation, and his human ingenuity that would determine what came next. He smiled slightly, ready for whatever lay ahead. Humans never backed down. Humans always found a way. And in that moment, Eli knew he would do what any human would: face the challenge head-on, with curiosity, intelligence, and relentless determination. Eli moved through the twisting corridors of the station, following the alien who had guided him so far. Every step felt like entering a place where the ordinary rules of physics and logic bent around him. The walls pulsed with soft light, casting shadows that danced across his path. Pipes hummed faintly overhead, carrying some unknown energy, and the faint smell of ozone mixed with something sweet and metallic. Eli could feel the station itself watching him, and in a strange way, he almost welcomed it. The alien walked ahead with perfect grace, her crystalline skin shimmering under the light. She moved without haste, confident, almost playful. Eli tried to match her pace, careful not to stumble, careful not to miss the subtle signals she left behind. Humans often succeeded where others failed because they could pay attention to small, easily overlooked details. A tilt of the head, the flicker of a finger, a faint shift in energy. They all mattered. Eli knew how to notice them, and he had spent years trusting instincts that had saved him more times than he could count. They reached a junction where several corridors branched in directions that seemed to defy reason. Eli paused, studying the signs. The symbols on the walls were unfamiliar, glowing faintly. Some seemed to respond when he looked at them. Others appeared to shift when the alien gestured. It was almost like the station itself was a living puzzle, a test of perception, patience, and creativity. Humans, with all their flaws, excelled in situations like this. They could improvise solutions when no instructions existed, and they could read patterns where others saw chaos. The alien stopped at one of the corridors and her gaze met his. It was the same look from before, the one that had unnerved him and intrigued him at the same time. It was a challenge, a question. Could he take the next step without hesitation? Could he act where logic alone might fail? Eli nodded slightly, and she turned to lead him down a narrow passage. The corridor was dimmer here, lined with reflective surfaces that made it feel endless. Eli noticed that some of the panels along the wall shimmered more brightly than others, as if highlighting a path. He reached out and touched one, and it pulsed gently in response. He smiled. This was a subtle hint, not a direct instruction. Humans had always had a knack for interpreting subtle cues, and he trusted his instincts. He followed the pattern, stepping carefully, feeling the rhythm of the station guiding him. As they moved, the alien stopped suddenly. Eli almost ran into her back. She raised her hand, pointing to a large panel that had been partially concealed by a shifting wall. Symbols flowed across it like liquid, intertwining in ways he could barely comprehend. Eli's mind raced. This was clearly another puzzle, but it was not a simple test of logic. It demanded creativity, improvisation, and an understanding of patterns that could not be predicted. He approached the panel and studied it. The symbols reacted to his gaze and movements, shifting when he looked away, changing when he hesitated. He realized that this was not just a puzzle, it was a simulation of the station's security and navigation systems. By manipulating it correctly, he could gain access to routes that were hidden, perhaps even secret areas that few had ever entered. The alien's eyes followed every gesture, almost encouraging him to try. Eli reached out, touching a symbol, and the panel shifted. Another set of nodes appeared, connected in ways he had not expected. He paused, considering his options. Humans often excelled in situations like this, where others relied on rigid logic or protocol. They could take risks, test boundaries, and adapt when the rules seemed to change. He remembered similar challenges in his past on other stations and ships, and he applied the same method: observe, test, adjust, and repeat. Hours passed as he worked through the panel. The alien watched silently, offering no guidance beyond subtle gestures and small changes in her own position. Eli noticed patterns emerging, connections that were not obvious at first glance. The station had been designed to test visitors, to challenge their perception, and to reward adaptability. Humans, in particular, had the ability to notice patterns others missed, to see connections between seemingly unrelated elements, and to act decisively when opportunities appeared. Finally, Eli reached a point where the simulation revealed a clear path through the station. The alien's eyes flickered, reflecting approval. Eli exhaled, feeling a mixture of relief and exhilaration. He had succeeded not by brute force or advanced technology, but by observation, creativity, and persistence, the traits that had made humans formidable throughout history. The alien gestured toward the corridor ahead. Eli stepped forward, following her guidance. The path led them into a large chamber, open to the ceiling, where platforms floated in midair, connected by thin beams of light. The platforms moved slowly, shifting in patterns that were predictable once observed, but complex enough to challenge anyone unfamiliar with them. Eli realized this was the next part of the station's test. He studied the patterns carefully. Each platform moved in a set rhythm, and the lights indicated safe paths. Humans had a talent for understanding movement and timing in ways that others often overlooked. He calculated his steps, timing each movement precisely, adjusting for the slight delays in the floating platforms. The alien moved gracefully ahead, leading the way, but Eli noticed that her gestures now seemed almost playful, as if she were testing him further, seeing how he would adapt. Step by step, he moved across the platforms, relying on instinct and careful observation. When a platform shifted unexpectedly, he adapted without hesitation. He felt a sense of exhilaration. Humans thrived on unpredictability, and their ability to improvise often turned apparent disadvantages into opportunities. He had learned to expect the unexpected, to remain calm under pressure, and to find solutions where others would freeze. At the end of the chamber, they arrived at a console embedded in the floor. The alien pointed at it and a holographic display emerged, showing a network of trade routes, hidden caches, and secret observation points throughout the expanse. Eli's eyes widened. The information was incredible. He could see paths that bypassed heavily monitored sectors, discover hidden stations, and even identify areas of potential resource collection that no official maps showed. He traced his finger along one of the routes, memorizing it. The alien's eyes followed every gesture, reflecting a mix of curiosity and approval. Eli realized that she had brought him here not merely to show him the information, but to see if he could understand it, to see if he could interpret the complex web of data in a way that a human mind could excel at. Humans often succeeded where others failed because they were flexible, observant, and willing to take calculated risks. Eli leaned back, considering the implications. With this knowledge, humans could navigate the expanse more efficiently than many alien species, gain access to secret resources, and establish connections in ways that had previously been impossible. He felt a surge of pride, not arrogance, but a recognition of the potential his species carried. Humans were small, yes, but unpredictable, resourceful, and adaptable in ways that even advanced species underestimated. The alien moved closer, her hand hovering over a section of the holographic map. She tilted her head slightly, indicating a particular route. Eli studied it carefully. The path was narrow, weaving through areas controlled by different factions. It was risky but efficient. He realized that this was the ultimate test of judgment. Humans were known for their daring, for making decisions that balanced risk with opportunity, and for acting decisively when others hesitated. He nodded slightly, signaling his understanding. The alien's eyes flickered with what he interpreted as satisfaction. Then, she gestured toward the next corridor. Eli followed, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation. The challenges were not over, but he had proven himself capable of interpreting complex systems, improvising solutions, and acting with initiative. These were human strengths, and they had served him well so far. As they moved deeper into the station, Eli began to notice subtle changes in the environment. The walls seemed to pulse with a different rhythm. The lights shifted in patterns he had not seen before, and soft vibrations ran along the floor. He realized that the station was not static. It was responding to their presence, testing them further, adjusting its behavior based on their actions. Humans often thrived in dynamic environments. They could adapt, learn, and respond to change in ways that many other species could not. Eli and the alien entered a room filled with floating panels, each displaying a different set of symbols and data streams. It was overwhelming at first glance. The alien gestured toward one of the panels and Eli approached. He studied it carefully, recognizing patterns that others might overlook. Humans were capable of connecting disparate elements, finding solutions through intuition and observation, and making sense of chaos. He began to manipulate the panel, testing connections, observing responses, and adjusting his approach. Hours passed as he worked through the complex system. The alien remained close, occasionally offering subtle hints through gestures. Eli noticed that the system responded differently to his touch than it had to the alien's presence, indicating that humans interacted with it in a unique way. This was the essence of what made humans remarkable, unpredictable yet capable, flexible yet determined. Finally, after careful observation and experimentation, Eli solved the system. The panels aligned, revealing a clear set of pathways and connections. The alien's eyes gleamed with approval. Eli exhaled, feeling a mixture of relief, satisfaction, and anticipation. He had succeeded not through force, not through superior technology, but through the qualities that defined humans: observation, creativity, adaptability, and courage. The alien extended a hand toward him, inviting him to proceed. Eli understood. He had demonstrated the potential of humans in a way that few alien species would recognize. Together, they moved toward the next section of the station, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. Humans never backed down, never failed to act, and always found a way to adapt. And Eli knew, with certainty, that he would do what any human would: confront the unknown with ingenuity, determination, and relentless curiosity. Eli followed the alien into a wide chamber, its walls glowing softly with pale blue light. The air smelled faintly of ozone and sweet minerals, a scent that made him feel alert and alive. He realized the station itself seemed to change as they moved through it, almost as if it were alive. Panels shifted slightly, corridors opened and closed silently, and soft currents of energy brushed past him. It was unlike anything he had experienced before, yet humans had a way of thriving in the unpredictable, of finding patterns where others saw chaos. That skill was proving invaluable now. The alien stopped in front of a large, suspended holographic globe. Eli approached cautiously, feeling a mix of awe and excitement. The globe displayed an intricate map of the expanse, highlighting star systems, trade routes, and stations hidden from official records. Eli traced a glowing path with his finger, and the globe responded instantly, rotating to show connections between systems he had never imagined. The alien gestured towards certain points on the globe. Eli realized she was asking him to interpret the map, to understand the routes, and to make decisions about which ones could be used safely. It was not a test of speed or strength, but of judgment, insight, and strategy. Humans excelled at these things. They could weigh risk and reward, anticipate consequences, and act with creativity that others did not possess. Eli felt a surge of confidence as he studied the network. As he analyzed the routes, he noticed one path stood out. It was shorter than the others but twisted through sectors controlled by several different alien factions. Most species would have avoided it, following safer, longer routes. But humans were known for their audacity and willingness to take calculated risks. Eli traced the path carefully, noting potential obstacles and safe zones along the way. The alien observed silently, her eyes flickering with subtle colors that seemed to reflect her thoughts. Eli realized she wanted to see how he approached the challenge, how he would weigh risk against opportunity. Humans often thrived in situations where rules were unclear, where the solution required intuition and adaptability rather than rigid protocol. He smiled slightly, recognizing that this was another test, and he was ready for it. "Follow me," she said finally, her voice a soft hum that vibrated in the air rather than through sound waves. Eli nodded, stepping onto a pathway that led deeper into the station. The corridor curved in impossible ways, the walls glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns that shifted as they moved. He noticed small hints embedded in the walls, a slight pulse here, a subtle flicker there. The alien's guidance was indirect, relying on his ability to observe and interpret, and Eli thrived under that kind of challenge. The corridor opened into a chamber filled with floating platforms, each one hovering several feet above the floor. Thin beams of light connected the platforms, forming paths that shifted slowly but predictably. Eli paused, studying the movement. The alien waited silently, her posture relaxed yet attentive. Humans had a unique talent for timing, for predicting movement based on observation and instinct. Eli calculated each step carefully, watching the rhythm of the platforms, and then moved forward with confidence. Step by step, he navigated the floating paths, adjusting his pace and angle with every shift. The alien moved alongside him, her movements almost a mirror but subtly different. It was as if she were testing his adaptability, seeing if he could adjust when the expected patterns changed. Humans excelled in this kind of situation. They could improvise when plans shifted, respond to new information quickly, and remain calm under pressure. Eli felt that adaptability guiding him, a quiet confidence that came from years of experience and instinct. At the end of the chamber, they reached a console embedded in the floor. The alien gestured toward it, and a new holographic display emerged, showing intricate systems within the station itself. Nodes, pathways, and energy flows pulsed softly in the air. Eli realized that this was another puzzle, a test of logic and creativity combined. The alien wanted to see if he could interpret the station's systems and make decisions that no algorithm could predict. He studied the display carefully. Each node responded to touch and gaze, shifting in ways that were not entirely logical but followed subtle patterns. Eli reached out, experimenting with connections, observing how the system reacted. He noticed that certain sequences triggered responses that unlocked hidden pathways, while others closed off sections entirely. Humans had a unique ability to recognize patterns in chaos, to test possibilities and learn from small errors without panicking. Hours passed as he manipulated the holographic nodes, testing connections and exploring the system's logic. The alien watched silently, occasionally shifting her position in ways that hinted at minor adjustments or encouragement. Eli felt a growing sense of mastery. He had learned to trust his instincts, to observe carefully, and to act decisively, skills that had allowed humans to survive and thrive in countless unpredictable situations. Finally, the system aligned. Hidden pathways and secret corridors illuminated, revealing routes that few had ever known. Eli's pulse quickened. The information was invaluable. He could see areas of the station that offered safe passage, overlooked resources, and strategic vantage points. The alien's eyes reflected approval, and Eli realized that he had passed the test. Not through brute force, not through luck, but through careful observation, creativity, and human ingenuity. The alien stepped aside, allowing him to move forward. Eli felt a sense of anticipation. The challenges had not ended. The station still held mysteries, and the path through it required constant attention and adaptability. Humans thrived in situations like this. Their ingenuity, resilience, and willingness to experiment often gave them an advantage over species that relied on rigid logic or tradition. As they advanced, Eli noticed a soft hum in the walls. Energy flowed through the station in subtle currents, and he realized that it responded to movement, almost as if it were aware of them. The alien's gestures became more nuanced, hinting at interactions with the energy flows that he had not yet understood. Eli observed carefully, learning from the patterns, and slowly he began to anticipate the station's responses. Humans often succeeded where others failed because they could combine observation, intuition, and rapid learning. At one point, a panel shifted, revealing a small chamber with a network of cables and conduits. Eli approached cautiously, studying the arrangement. The alien's eyes followed him, curious but patient. He realized that the station allowed interaction with its inner workings, but only if approached intelligently. Humans had a remarkable ability to adapt to unfamiliar technology, to learn quickly, and to exploit systems creatively. He traced a few cables, tested connections, and discovered a sequence that illuminated another hidden pathway. The alien tilted her head slightly, a signal that he had understood the system correctly. Eli felt a surge of satisfaction. Humans often thrived on challenges that required flexibility and insight. They could read patterns in ways others could not, anticipate responses, and act decisively. He had demonstrated those skills repeatedly in the station's tests, and each success gave him confidence. Finally, they reached a chamber that seemed to pulse with life. The walls glowed more brightly, and the air hummed with energy. In the center floated a large holographic map, displaying systems, routes, and nodes that connected the entire expanse. Eli approached cautiously, studying the connections. He realized that this map was the culmination of everything he had learned, understanding complex systems, anticipating movement, and interpreting subtle cues. Humans had always excelled at seeing the bigger picture, connecting disparate elements and acting with insight. He traced his finger along a route, memorizing it carefully. The alien watched silently, her expression calm but intense. Eli realized that she had brought him here not merely to show him the information, but to see if he could understand it, to see if he could interpret complexity in a way that humans could uniquely do. Their partnership, though unspoken, was built on observation, trust, and mutual understanding. Humans often formed connections through collaboration, empathy, and shared focus, even with those who were very different from them. As he studied the map, Eli noticed one route that seemed particularly advantageous. It was efficient, weaving through sectors controlled by different factions but avoiding heavily monitored areas. Most species would avoid it, preferring longer, safer paths. Humans, however, were often willing to take calculated risks for greater rewards. Eli understood that this was another test, measuring judgment, insight, and courage. He nodded slightly, signaling his understanding. The alien's eyes flickered with what he interpreted as satisfaction. Then, she gestured toward the corridor leading further into the station. Eli followed, feeling anticipation mixed with excitement. The challenges had not ended, but he had proven himself capable of interpreting complex systems, improvising solutions, and acting with initiative. These were human strengths, and they had carried him through the station so far. The corridor opened into a quiet chamber, filled with soft light and subtle energy flows. The alien gestured for him to observe. Eli studied the patterns, noticing how energy pulsed through the walls and floors, responding to movement and touch. It was clear that understanding these flows would be crucial for navigating the remaining parts of the station. Humans excelled in observation and adaptation, skills that allowed them to turn complex and unfamiliar systems into opportunities. Step by step, Eli tested the energy flows, observing reactions and adjusting his approach. He discovered subtle patterns and sequences, learning how to interact with the station safely and efficiently. The alien watched closely, occasionally shifting her position to indicate minor adjustments. Eli felt a growing sense of mastery. Humans often succeeded by combining curiosity, intelligence, and persistence, and that combination was proving powerful in the station's challenges. Finally, after hours of careful observation and experimentation, Eli had mapped the energy flows, understood the hidden pathways, and interpreted the complex systems of the chamber. The alien stepped forward, her eyes reflecting approval and recognition. Eli realized that he had not only solved the station's challenges, but demonstrated the qualities that made humans extraordinary: adaptability, ingenuity, curiosity, and courage. As they prepared to move deeper into the station, Eli felt anticipation and excitement. The unknown stretched ahead, full of possibilities. Humans often thrived in unpredictable situations, finding solutions where others failed. He knew that whatever came next, he would face it with the qualities that had brought him this far. Humans never gave up. Humans never failed to act. And Eli knew, with certainty, that he would do what any human would: confront the unknown with intelligence, determination, and relentless curiosity. Eli and the alien moved through the final corridor of the station, the walls glowing softly in rhythmic patterns that seemed to pulse in time with their steps. The air was alive with subtle energy, humming faintly beneath their feet, carrying the faint scent of ozone mixed with minerals. Every sense was alert. He could feel the station itself watching, reacting to their presence. He had learned over the last several hours to observe these shifts, to notice patterns in the chaos, and to respond in ways that few others could. The alien walked ahead with graceful confidence, her translucent skin shimmering with faint colors that reflected her moods. Eli followed closely, his mind buzzing with possibilities. He understood that the journey had not been simply a test or a series of puzzles. It had been a lesson, a challenge, and a partnership all at once. Humans often excelled in situations where others relied on rigidity. They adapted, observed, improvised, and acted decisively. That had been his advantage from the moment he first saw the alien's challenging gaze. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that seemed to extend endlessly in every direction. Floating platforms hovered above the floor, connected by beams of light that shifted slowly but predictably. Holographic panels floated in the air, displaying systems, routes, and data streams that connected the station to the wider expanse. Eli's eyes widened. This was the heart of the station, the control center where knowledge, movement, and energy converged. The alien stopped and turned to face him, her eyes locking with his in that same look that had unsettled him, yet sparked determination. Eli understood now that this was the final test. The station was dynamic, constantly shifting, and he would need to navigate it intelligently. Humans often succeeded in unpredictable environments because they combined observation, intuition, and bold decision-making. This was the ultimate opportunity to demonstrate that human ingenuity could match or surpass the designs of an alien civilization. He stepped forward cautiously, studying the floating platforms. Each one pulsed with energy, rising and falling in subtle rhythms. The alien moved across them effortlessly, her gestures indicating possible paths without speaking. Eli observed carefully, timing his steps, adjusting for shifts in the platforms. Humans had a talent for recognizing rhythm, anticipating motion, and responding quickly. His confidence grew with each step, a quiet thrill running through him. Partway across the chamber, one platform shifted unexpectedly, breaking the pattern he had anticipated. Most species might hesitate, waiting for the system to stabilize or following the previous logic. Eli paused for only a heartbeat, then adjusted his footing and timing, continuing forward. Humans thrived in these moments of improvisation, using uncertainty as a tool rather than a threat. His mind worked quickly, calculating movement, interpreting subtle cues in the platform's energy, and responding with both intuition and logic. As he reached the center of the chamber, he noticed a cluster of holographic panels forming a three-dimensional puzzle. Symbols, nodes, and flowing data streams rotated in complex patterns, reacting to his presence. The alien gestured toward them, a silent invitation to interact. Eli understood that this was not a challenge of speed or strength, but of insight, creativity, and perception. Humans excelled at seeing patterns where others saw chaos, connecting disparate elements and finding solutions that were not obvious. He reached out, testing connections, observing reactions, and adjusting his approach. Each attempt revealed new interactions. The system was responsive, almost sentient in its complexity. Yet Eli noticed subtle sequences that indicated openings, weak points, or pathways that could be aligned. Humans had an advantage in unpredictability. They did not follow rigid logic alone, and they could make creative leaps when others were bound by protocol. Hours passed as he manipulated the panels, tracing paths, connecting nodes, and experimenting with sequences. The alien watched silently, occasionally shifting in ways that hinted at subtle adjustments or encouragement. Eli's mind remained focused, analyzing each movement, noticing even the smallest reactions, and responding intuitively. Persistence and observation were human strengths, and they carried him forward through the complexity of the station. Finally, the panels aligned, forming a clear path of energy through the chamber. A holographic corridor lit up before them, extending toward what Eli recognized as the station's exit. The alien's eyes reflected approval, shimmering in soft waves of light. Eli felt a surge of accomplishment, but also awareness. The knowledge he had gained, the paths he had traced, and the insights he had uncovered were invaluable. Humans had succeeded not through force, but through intelligence, observation, creativity, and courage. He stepped onto the newly illuminated path. The alien followed, and together they moved through the chamber, floating platforms shifting and energy beams guiding their way. Eli realized that the final corridor was more than a physical path. It was a culmination of all the lessons he had learned: attention to detail, timing, intuition, and the ability to act decisively in an unpredictable environment. Humans excelled when complexity demanded flexibility and creativity, and this moment demonstrated it perfectly. As they neared the exit, the alien gestured toward a console at the end of the chamber. Holographic data flowed across it, displaying routes, stations, and nodes throughout the expanse. Eli approached, tracing the connections carefully. He noticed a particular route, winding through sectors controlled by multiple factions but avoiding heavily monitored zones. It was efficient, daring, and risky, a path that required judgment, insight, and courage. Humans often succeeded by taking calculated risks where others would hesitate, and this was the ultimate expression of that skill. The alien tilted her head slightly, her gaze steady and focused. Eli understood her meaning. The path was not just about navigation, it was about strategy, perception, and the ability to anticipate the reactions of others. Humans excelled in these areas because they were adaptable, observant, and creative. He traced the path, memorizing every twist and turn, every potential obstacle, and every opportunity. A soft hum vibrated through the chamber. Energy pulsed in the walls and floors, responding to his presence. Eli realized the station itself had been observing, testing, and adapting to him throughout their journey. The alien's guidance had been subtle, indirect, but perfectly timed to allow him to demonstrate human ingenuity. He smiled slightly. Humans had always thrived in dynamic, unpredictable environments, turning complexity into opportunity through insight, observation, and decisiveness. Finally, they reached the station's outer exit, a large airlock opening onto a viewing platform that looked out into the expanse. Stars stretched infinitely in every direction, and distant stations glimmered like jewels. Eli felt a sense of awe and accomplishment. The alien stood beside him, her gaze meeting his. It was the same look that had first captured his attention, the one that had sparked curiosity, challenge, and determination, but now it carried recognition and respect. "You understand," she said, her voice a soft hum that resonated in his mind rather than his ears. "Humans, they are unpredictable." Eli nodded. He understood. The journey through the station had demonstrated not just his skill, but the qualities that defined his species: adaptability, observation, intuition, creativity, and courage. Humans often succeeded where others failed, not because of superior technology, but because they could see possibilities where others saw limits. Eli felt a surge of pride. The knowledge he carried now, the routes, the hidden stations, and the understanding of the station systems, was more than valuable information. It was proof that humans could excel in ways that alien civilizations did not anticipate. They could navigate complexity, adapt to changing circumstances, and act with intelligence and initiative. This was the essence of what made humanity remarkable. The alien extended her hand toward him, not as a command but as an invitation. Eli understood. Their partnership, though brief, had been built on observation, trust, and mutual understanding. Humans had a unique ability to form connections even with beings very different from themselves, to collaborate through insight and shared purpose. He took her hand, and together they activated a final sequence on the console. Holographic pathways lit up, extending beyond the station into the wider expanse. Eli traced them carefully, memorizing routes that could allow human travelers to move efficiently, safely, and strategically across star systems. The alien's eyes reflected satisfaction. She had tested him, guided him, and now acknowledged that he had met every challenge. Humans were clever, adaptable, and bold, and this station had been designed to measure precisely those traits. As the airlock opened, Eli stepped onto the observation platform. The view of the stars was breathtaking, and he felt the weight of the journey settle on him. The alien's gaze remained on him, and he realized that the first look she had given him, the one that had sparked curiosity, challenge, and determination, had been an invitation all along. Not flirtation, not threat, but recognition. Recognition that humans were not to be underestimated. Eli smiled, a quiet satisfaction spreading through him. Humans had a way of thriving in unpredictable environments, of solving problems through creativity, observation, and courage, and of turning challenges into opportunities. This station had tested every one of those qualities, and he had passed. Not because he was perfect, but because he had acted like a human, curious, adaptable, inventive, and bold. The alien gestured toward the platform's exit, leading to a docking bay where Eli's ship awaited. He followed, knowing that the knowledge, experience, and understanding he had gained would have far-reaching consequences. Humans often carried impact beyond what others expected, turning small actions into significant outcomes. He had proven that unpredictability, ingenuity, and courage could open doors where others saw only barriers. As they approached the docking bay, Eli glanced back at the station one last time. The corridors, chambers, and floating platforms had been more than tests. They had been lessons, a demonstration of human potential, and a reminder that adaptability, creativity, and courage were often more powerful than raw strength or rigid logic. The alien stopped beside his ship, her eyes meeting his. Eli realized that their partnership had been a rare and valuable connection, one built on insight, respect, and shared experience. Humans often thrived in collaboration, even with species vastly different from themselves, because they could observe, adapt, and act with intelligence. He stepped aboard the Starling, feeling a mixture of excitement and anticipation. The alien followed, remaining nearby but giving him space to operate. Eli initiated the ship systems, plotting a course along the hidden routes he had memorized. Humans had a knack for exploration, for turning knowledge into action, and for acting boldly when opportunity arose. He smiled, knowing that this journey was only the beginning. As the station disappeared behind them, Eli looked at the alien and said softly, "I think I understand now. That look, it wasn't just a challenge. It was recognition. Recognition of what humans can do." She tilted her head slightly, eyes reflecting a spectrum of colors that Eli interpreted as agreement. Eli leaned back in the pilot's seat, feeling the hum of the ship beneath him and the vastness of the stars ahead. Humans had a reputation for audacity, ingenuity, and resilience, and now he had first-hand proof that those qualities could shine even among the most advanced civilizations. He smiled again. Whatever challenges awaited them in the expanse, he knew one thing: he would do what any human would. He would observe, adapt, improvise, and act with intelligence and courage. He would turn uncertainty into opportunity, and he would never be underestimated. The alien gave him one last look, a subtle but unmistakable gesture of respect. Eli felt the weight of that acknowledgement and knew it would remain with him forever. Humans were unpredictable, clever, and bold. That was their greatest strength. And as the Starling slipped into the starfield, Weaving through hidden routes that only humans could navigate with such insight, Eli felt a quiet thrill. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries and challenges, but humans had always found a way. And now, in the company of this alien, he knew that anything was possible.